All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We had a nice crowd here in Invoke. I know we have a couple classes joining us remotely. We've also got the iHub online with a couple people there. So we have a really great crowd. I'm really excited for all of you to be able to join us. This is our first Distinguished Lecturer Series for the semester, the first one for the 22-23 school year. So I know for some of you, this is brand new. This is part of our Industry Connect initiative. The Industry Connect initiative is a very unique offering here at Southeastern. I've learned in the past year as we have presented papers and spoken at conferences on this initiative. I've learned that this is quite unique. So I'm really excited to see so many students here, some faculty here. This is something we do to connect our students with industry in a meaningful way that really just results in some great synergies, and it also results in a win-win. Our industry gets amazing employees and you guys get amazing jobs. So it's just win-win. This is only one part of that Industry Connect initiative, and you'll learn more about this as you continue at Southeastern. You'll learn about our internships. You'll learn about our curriculum pieces that involve industry, and we have an industry advisory board as well. And those four components make up what we like to call our Industry Connect initiative. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker today, who's from Elevator 3. Her name is Hebah Saleh. I've been trying to get this right. Saleh. It's a beautiful name, and I keep messing it up, but Hebah Saleh. She's a product owner at Elevator 3 with various backgrounds in software development, in business management, and graphic design. So in 2014, she received her bachelor's degree in business administration with an economics concentration here at Southeastern. So she's an alumni. Line up. And over the next 8 years, her experiences led her to an interest in website design and also development. So in 2018, she returned to Southeastern to pursue computer science as a degree and become a software developer. But before graduating, she landed a software development internship that eventually led to a full-time position at Elevator 3, which is where she is today. And she's been able to combine her love for programming and business processes at Elevator 3. So without further ado, I present to you Hebah.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Okay, so how many of y'all are in the pre-MBA concentration? Anybody? Already graduated, don't count. Okay, that's okay. So a little bit about me before we get started. All right, so as Dr. Shea said, I graduated from Southeastern in business administration with a focus of econ. At the time, many years ago, I wanted to open my own venue or translate it into photography somehow. That was my love. I ended up going into management in various fields. I did restaurant management. I filmed weddings. I ran a couple other local businesses, and I ended up in print and design. So while I was in design, I decided to look into web development. And I wanted to translate what I had learned into maybe like teaching myself online or boot camp or something. But over time, I figured out that I need a little more structure. That's just the kind of person that I am. So I came back to Southeastern and started the computer science program with the IT concentration. I did a year, got an internship at a company in Baton Rouge called Informatics as a software developer intern. And I expressed some interest in project management. So a little ways into that, they offered me a full-time position as a project coordinator. So I did drop out a little bit early, but my reasoning was I already had a degree. So please don't drop out of school. Please finish your degree. And that led me into a couple of other things. I immediately got on a project for the Department of Child and Family Services. I trained users in a new software that was being released to them. I did classes with them. I kind of taught them how things work. I did quality assurance on the software. So tested it from beginning to end. And I ended up doing customer support also. So just talking to clients or the people who were going to be using it every day and figuring out like what was wrong, what needed to be fixed, or just where things weren't making sense. A lot of these things are kind of subsets of software development. They don't involve coding at all, so that kind of sucks. But I know you've all heard like a jack of all trades is a master of none. So if you actually read the entire thing, it's a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So instead of doing just one thing, I try to kind of go into like a little bit of everything. And all of this accumulated to my knowledge that I have today that I can apply to managing projects. After informatics, I ended up at Elevator 3. So I still wanted to do a little bit of development, and they were like they let me do that, and I'm very grateful for that. So I got to kind of switch out of the project coordinator role, code a little bit, and then slowly transition back into the project management role. It was a whole thing, but the biggest thing I learned is that you kind of can't do both, and so I had to pick, and I picked product owner, and we're going to talk about those roles a little bit. So as a developer, you do a lot of research, you design your code base, you figure out what needs to be built and how to build it, the technology stack, you do a lot of problem solving, you have to maintain the software, unit tests. I'm sure they're teaching you that in 285, hopefully, because they force it on us. And you do a lot of documentation you do a lot of documentation for everything that you write so that in the future developers can come back and they know what they're looking at. The mindset is focused on the how. So how are we going to build a feature? How are we going to build something that the user is going to use in the software? What the technology stack is. Are we using React? Are we going to use React and JavaScript or React and TypeScript? What our backend's going to look like? And you're also more focused on the sprint. So sprints in Agile are 2-week periods where you get a couple of tasks and you have to complete those. The goal is to get them all done. So as a developer, you're kind of focused on like a little bit at a time instead of the bigger picture. And then as a product owner, change it up a little bit. So no more coding, boo. But you have a lot more client interaction. You have to hold and attend all of the Agile and Scrum meetings. You control the backlog, so which is going to be your list of things that make up the entire project that you have to get built, or the developers will have to build. And you work through those in iterations or sprints, which is the 2-week periods in Agile. And then you work on user story acceptance criteria. So you have to figure out not just like a user can log in, but what are the rules of that of logging in, I guess. The mindset is more focused on the product. So instead of the how, no technical stuff, it's what is the problem we want to solve and why do we want to solve it? Why does the client need this? You represent the customer and the business value. So you're less focused on the code and technical details of it and more focused on the bigger picture. So instead of 2 weeks at a time, it's how do all of those 2 weeks add up over 3 or 4 months or however long your project is. And you also have to make sure that all of the technical stuff that the developers are coming up with align with all the business stuff that you're going to be doing, or the big picture of the project. So for me, it was a journey transitioning. There are different roles. So developer, again, is the how, and the product owner is the why and the what. We'll go into each of these. So decisions, you have to determine as a product owner, the product vision, so why and what the customer needs. And you also have to have respect for the development team and trust that they're going to build what you're saying that the client wants, essentially. and that they're going to build it in the right way. So don't laugh at me. Transitioning from, they're on my project, that's why they're laughing. So transitioning from that, like I get into the how a lot. That's been an adjustment. I'll be like, oh, so how would you make this button? Or how would you do this? Or how would you make this work? And I have to kind of like stop myself a lot and let my developers handle that. And I just have to know that they're going to make it work how the customer needs it to work. So trusting the team and avoiding influencing them on technical choices. The bigger picture, like I said earlier, so as a developer, you're focused on features, how to build it, how to make it work, how to keep it working. The product owner is going to focus on the entire product vision. So from beginning to end, what is the end picture going to look like? Communication. This one is kind of a struggle for me because when doing development, I learned a little bit of technical talk. Not super great at it, but better than I was. And being able to understand what the client needs, talk to them, and then translate that to developers, and then hear all the technical talk and not go back to the client and continue to talk technically it takes practice. So the secret of communication is knowing how to communicate the right piece of information to the right audience at the right moment through the right method, and how to translate that. So bring it to the team. Some questions that the PO cannot answer without the development team. You never want to say when it can be done, how it's going to get done, how hard it is or not hard, and what the possible solutions are. You want to ensure that the development team has an understanding of what the goals are, and then they can define the solution. Some advantages to being a product owner or from making the transition is that you do understand the more technical side of it. Since I did the school project management and then back to development for a little bit, and now in product ownership, there was a phase where I didn't really know what all the technical stuff was. It's continuously changing. You're going to be learning stuff forever. That's kind of part of the appeal for a lot of people. So now when developers actually say stuff to me, because I went back to development for a little bit, I understand what they're saying. And I understand how that translates to what the product needs. And then understanding it from the development perspective. So everybody just wants to be understood. I think that when you make that transition, you understand what if a developer says it's harder, it's easier, it's complex, or it's going to take some time, you know what they need, and hopefully you're able to help them out a little bit. Disadvantages, focusing on the technical aspects, so I still get caught up in that, like I said earlier. And then if every developer knows how to do something differently, right? Because coding is to me, whenever you're coding, it's your own personal language. Yes, you have languages, but it's speaking from one person to another. It's your own thing. So sometimes if I get caught up on the technical side of things, it's easy to kind of say oh, well, this is the only way to do it, but that's not true. So I have to kind of take a step back and look at it from the client's perspective. And then crossing the dangerous border between PO and the development team. So same thing, just trying not to get back into the technical side and trusting your team. And that's it. So I talk really fast. I can repeat stuff, but I'm also kind of nervous. Does anyone have any questions for me? Does anyone? Yes.
So how do you deal with, in the event of, let's say we have multiple products, right? How do you deal with managing the development team and trying to accomplish a very long approach for those different achievables and the time frame?
There's so in the beginning it was there was a lot of trying to figure that out, and over the past year or so, we've been, E3 as a whole has been kind of developing like a project process. So in the beginning, you kind of have to get like a basic list of what client needs. And then you break that up in sprints. So you have backlog refinements every sprint where you go in and like look at everything and kind of say like, this is still needed, this isn't. You're continuously communicating with the client, and every 2 weeks at the end of the sprint, you have a review. You show them, hey, like this is what we've been working on. Most of the time, they love it. Sometimes they're like, not exactly what I meant. Or like that's actually gonna be changing in a couple of weeks. It's the benefit of living in an agile world versus waterfall, where you kind of decide everything up front. You can adapt to it as you go. With multiple projects, it's kind of the same thing. Like you just have to make sure you plan your meetings ahead of time. Make sure it's just time management and planning. I don't know, but follow the process. Yeah. Can Hebah hear from the remote crew if we have a question? Yeah, I can read it. What you got, Cade? Open queue. Don't press that.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Hebah, how are you?
Hey, good. How about you?
I'm great. I was curious if you guys have a way at E3, with you being product owner, how do you prioritize changes that customers request with your development team? Do you set priorities to them? Is it based on time or anything like that? Or?
It kind of depends. So since we have an agile approach, and you kind of like get like I said, like a list of everything all at once, but then you don't really plan them in detail until you're coming up on the sprint, or like right before it, I guess. So you're constantly meeting with the client, and you're constantly trying to figure out what those changes might be. So one client, he had an idea of what he wanted at the beginning, and then over time, we've had to adapt to his needs for the app that he needed, and then also some internal needs in terms of the code, and being able to build something a certain way, or having to kind of adapt the software because something changed. But constant communication, with both the client and the team, and just making sure that everyone knows like what's going on.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And then following up to that, do you primarily have your development driven by the customer request, or is there like a team lead, or maybe you or one of the other product owners also have like some driving force there as well for the general product ideas? Or
it's a give and take. So we have one client who really knew what he wanted, and he came in and he was like, this is how I want it to work, and this is why. And so that process was a lot smoother because it was like, oh, he knows what he's talking about. It makes sense. We have another client who kind of came to us with like, this is what we're doing now, and we need it to be more efficient. So they had ideas. The thing is like to not be afraid to push back as a PO on both the customer. Like you're not going to say, no, that's a terrible idea, but you're going to say, well, like, have you thought about doing it this way? Or is there another way that you've tried in the past? And the same thing for the dev team. So developer might say like, I think it should be this way, and it's this like because of this. And so having to constantly think out of the box and like, okay, but what if we did this way? We refer to other projects and kind of see what happened there. Yes, Shiva.
Do you miss meeting?
I do. So I think that's what kind of keeps me in the technical side of things is I still am very interested in like what's going on, and I still want to look at code and like figure it all out. Problem solving is what attracted me to development and the design side of it. So like the UI UX. At E3, I get to dabble in the like mock-ups and stuff and work with developers to figure out what it's going to look like. And at home, like I try to code every now and then just to keep it fresh and to like kind of scratch that itch, I guess. I got 2. Was that good? Jake.
Can you kind of explain the process of how do you like get the back like all the small little tasks and how do you add those up and figure out how long it's going to take for the project to be done? How do you try and keep the project on or like the delivery?
Yeah, so usually a client will say like, I need this in 3 months, 6 months, a year, however long. Then you can probably determine, you'll get like the list of what they're thinking of, like what they want. And then you have to figure out how many developers you would want on that based off of an estimation that you get. So like you've done an estimation, a couple other guys have done a mini theory. And based on those hours have to be translated into business hours and actual work days. You have to consider holidays, weekends, vacations, etc. And then, so there's a like sprint points. Does everybody know what those are? Nope. So Fibonacci numbers.
Starbucks coffee cups.
What's that?
One of the examples like Starbucks coffee cups, we have a tall, the grande, and the venti.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard of that one before. Okay. So that's one way to do it. And then you have like maybe, so using Fibonacci, like 1 is like a text change or a color change. You have 2 and 3, something a little bit more. And like as the numbers get bigger, the more time consuming or complicated it's going to be, or just like more work, more time it will take. So in the first couple sprints, you have to figure out what that velocity is. So like how many sprint points are we going through in one sprint? So developer, there's 5 items. You'll say one's a 3, one's a 5, another one's a 5, it's 10, 13, and then like one's an 8. And so if you have 2 developers, you can go through that in the entire sprint. You add all those numbers up, and that's your total for the average of how many items you can go through a sprint. Does that answer it? I feel like I could go way more detailed, but like it's so much.
That whole process of learning stuff.
Yeah. So we have the estimation in the beginning of a project that gives us like a broad timeline. You're gonna tell the client, we're gonna try and keep that within 10%. So a little bit over, a little bit under is a possibility. And then each sprint at the beginning, I have to keep up with the backlog throughout the entire thing, but all the developers and myself and one other person, the project coordinator, will get in a room and they'll say like, that's no longer a 3, we think that's going to be a 5, or that's no longer an 8, we think it's going to be a 3. And then the number of points is how you figure out how much you can do. Do you want to explain?
So do you have any tips for like dealing with difficult clients? Because like bite your tongue or play nice doesn't always work, whether it be like culturally or just like they're like, we want everything to work with a specific type of technology, but it isn't applicable to it.
So I can't say that I've had any super difficult clients. I've had some that understand technology a little bit more and some that really don't. So the best thing is, one, you don't want to be super technical with them, even if they are technical, because you just want to keep it as simple as possible. You don't want to go into the how of how it's going to go, right? And then, like, I don't think I've ever had a client say, like, no, I want it this way. That's the only way, right? It's definitely helpful to always try and ask why. Like, why do you want it to work that way? How are you going to use that in your daily, like, because we do a lot of business applications. So how is that going to benefit you? And then from there, you can kind of like, well, what if you did this way or what if you didn't? Or maybe they have like their mindset and you kind of agree with them by the time they explain why, right? It's all about like the business needs. James.
So how do you do with the attrition of ideas, like internally to your development team? Because as developers, we all kind of have our own approach to things, and there's a saying of like attrition breeds great ideas. But how do you guys mediate that?
How do we mediate? What is it?
Arguing we should do A over B, like two different apps on supporting a facility?
So if anything, we've had more. Okay, so there have been instances where like I'll push back on the dev team, or like another PO or PM will push back on the dev team. It's not really an argument. It's more of, again, like, why do you think it should be that way? And like to where you explain it enough to where everyone in the room understands. And then collectively, you just kind of have to know, like, one, as a PO, you have to trust the team, right? Two, as the dev team, you have to trust the PO and know that they, like, my best interest is what the client needs, like what is gonna make them more efficient or build the app or something that they want. It's all about trust, really, and communication. So just being able to explain everything to each other and trusting that, I know that Zach, if he tells me that it's got to do this way, I'm like, okay, Zach, like, you know. And also, like, you can't be afraid to push back either. That's a big thing. So one of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, if you haven't read it, it's a really good short book everyone should read. It's just being comfortable saying how you feel, why you feel it, and also from the other side, like accepting, like if I get upset or frustrated, we have enough respect in the team to where they know that, like, I'm not actually mad at them, you know, there's just like my way of processing it. And vice versa. I know. I give them a hard time. They give me a hard time too. There's like 2 or 3 of them, and then there's me. So, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Any other? Yeah.
One question. Do you think it's a harder learning curve? So, say you're just a project, the product owner, and you only have a business background, rather than a person who has a business background and technology background. I think it's way harder to learn than to have something without the technical background.
Depends on the person. Depends on how willing you are to go home and maybe like read about QA or read about development or something, or read about what those little like words that you catch throughout the day are. But I think I'm very like, I think anyone can do anything if you want to. So if, you know, as long as you do that too, it's okay. I don't know a lot because like I didn't stay in development. I didn't get the full degree. I don't know a lot of what they're talking about sometimes, so I just have to take it upon myself and like go research that at home, or in my spare time at work, or ask questions. That's the biggest thing. You're not going to learn anything if you don't ask questions, right? So when you go to Google, you're asking a question. Same thing, like when I go to them, I'm like, what did you mean by that and why? But it helps to have the tech background. But again, just ask questions. Most of the time, like, there is no dumb question. Everyone's willing to answer it. I will say that in my career here, like, so through my business degree, I was the person who didn't ask questions. Like, I didn't want to seem like I didn't know. And like coming here and getting in this program, like everyone was so willing to help and everyone wanted to like learn with each other. And so that's where I learned it.
Any tips to avoid people pleasing when it comes to speaking with clients and allowing us to agree?
Yeah, don't always say yes. I learned that the hard way.
Easy.
Easy. Yeah.
How many mean? Yeah, so
No, I mean, like, you know, like, I think everybody's a little bit of a people pleaser. I am. I'm definitely a people pleaser. But it's always questioning the why and the what. Like, what's it going to solve and why do they want to solve it that way? I know I sound like a broken record, but it really all goes back to that. Somebody else.
do you think that teams would benefit either your team or just like in general from having sort of like a rotation of people working in different teams, like understanding the different aspects of development, kind of help with those internal needs?
With one project?
Or just with any, just you can say like for this project, we want this set of people doing these specific task on the next project, switch it up, just doesn't have sense.
Oh yeah. So like I think in the beginning we kind of like stuck to the same teams, like these two guys on this and these two guys on this. It creates more, like everyone becomes more comfortable when you're switching around stuff. I mean, you're not gonna stick like if two people aren't, like, they're not cool. You're not gonna put them on the same team, right? But it improves creativity, I think, because like Zach and I might look at something different than like Jake and I, it inspires like teamwork and like relationship building. And there's also other pros and cons, but short answer, yes. Like, yes.
So knowing that computer science is not very good at computation, how do you deal with working with developers and getting them to express how difficult it is to do your how do you pull that information out of somebody who's not good at talking? What's your
Well, I only ever have you on my project, so like, that's not a problem. So. It is, you have to know how to make people feel more comfortable. One way to do that is to make someone feel heard. So asking them about themselves, starting little conversations that aren't always related to the project, making them feel comfortable talking to you. And that's for clients too, because you have some clients who come in, they're just kind of quiet, they just go through reviews and they don't say a word. It's like, all right, so, if you hate it, I think you love it, I don't know. It's trying to be friends with people, I don't know, which I enjoy already, so I'm already like, hey, what's up? Did you see that game? I don't watch baseball, but it looked cool. Sounds like a movie. Just little things. And usually, like, once, someone is comfortable with you on, like, talking about not project things, then probably open up a little bit more in meetings. If you only sit in meetings, I'm like, I just have to. How do I see it? Oh. Okay. What certifications would you recommend for product ownership and similar roles? So I know that there are Scrum certifications. I haven't looked into this. Personally, I'm going to start with the CAP-M pretty soon, actually. So there's the Project Management Institute, which is like a national thing. They have different certifications. Like one of the big ones some people might have heard of is the PMP, Project Management something, I don't remember. But that's like the biggest certification you can get in the field of project management. The CAP-M is kind of like the baby sister, baby brother of that. So you don't need as much experience for it or as many like credit hours. Project Management Professional, thank you. That's what PMP stands for. CAP-M, Certified Associate Project Manager, also don't know. So those are the two that I think, and then any like Scrum certifications. A couple of people at E3 and like upper management have those, and like it's a good way to run anything. Besides those, I haven't really looked into any really. Yes.
So, can you try to explain the difference between a project manager, project coordinator?
So there are defined roles for those three things. Generally, there's like an industry standard. At E3, it's a little different. So we're a startup. We are learning as we go. We're creating processes. This year has been like really focused on that for development and projects. At E3, the project manager kind of gets the project started by building the relationship with the client, being like the main point of contact in the beginning, figuring out what the client needs and kind of getting like a budget created. Product owner, I'm focused on the product. So the product in terms of what the client needs. I handle backlog refinements, I handle the sprints, I handle the developer's needs. I make sure that things are moving along the way that it's supposed to. And then project coordinator is so like one of the things that like it sounds like a hierarchy, but it's kind of not. So Joe is the project coordinator at E3, and so we try to keep everyone like on the same level. Like no one's really above anyone. Like I'm not your boss technically, you know. We're collaborators. So project coordinator will handle documentation, quality assurance if we don't have a QA for a project, and then we both sit in on meetings all the time and kind of go through ideas together and work with the development team. They get more defined than that, but it depends on where you are, kind of.
What are interactions like between you and the other project managers and product coordinators and stuff? Do you have people come in and give ideas on your product, or is it kind of just it's not like
Yeah, it's definitely like a collaboration. So if I have questions, I can go to them and kind of say like, what do you think about this? Or like this feature like kind of seems, you know, how would you go about it? Or how have you done it in the previous project? The project manager at E3 has a lot more experience than me. So I'm definitely always asking like, how would you solve this problem? And then, yeah, between like the PM, PO team, like we all kind of just collaborate. But it's all like separate projects, and like I have like 2 or 3, someone else has 2 or 3, but I have to know what's going on everywhere. Yeah.
So, kind of personally, I've dealt with whenever you're transitioning into a new role, you kind of have a lot of mental overload in that you have no working idea what you're doing, plus you're still trying to do what you have been doing while you transition. How have you been handling that?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who like always thinks that they don't know what they're doing. So like major imposter syndrome. I have little wins here and there that are really nice that I'm like, oh, I did that right. I think, you know, I work with a really good team to where we're kind of all trying to be like, you did a great job. Sprint retrospectives are really good. So at the end of every sprint in every project, we try and like, hey, what were the wins? Not just for the team, but for individuals. What is something that we tried and like it didn't work? And like what's something that we tried and like it just needs to be like tweaked a little bit. So for me and everyone else, like I think it's just like giving recognition where it's deserved, and like that helps me a lot. So you know, if someone does a great job, tell them. Why not?
So for your as a product owner, do you have to like worry about like say when people are remote or not, to ask questions, or do you prefer when like the person to ask those questions about certain things?
I'm finding a way. Like the industry's moving to way more remote, right? There are some companies that are doing in-house. Like E3 is pretty flexible, so sometimes I'm like, I'm working from home today. It's just, you know, you just want to make sure that like everyone knows. We have Slack to communicate, which is like a Discord, but business-wise. Everything's better in person for me, but I just like being around people. But there are some days I don't want to get out of my pajamas, so I want to be at home, you know? And everyone has different needs. Like some developers just want to stay, like they just want to work at home. They just want to like focus, and some of them want to be in the office. They can't focus at home. So you kind of have to be like okay with that. And I think COVID has kind of taught us to be okay with it, right? So being at home, like when I got that PC position a few years ago and I was doing the training and I was doing customer support, I was in like a really small apartment by myself, and that's when COVID started. And I'm just sitting on my desk all day, and so I learned to talk to people online. And I know that you guys have, like, y'all use Discord and y'all are always like, that's what I did when I was here, you know? So, anyway.
I have a question. So I've seen like YouTube and like TikTok communication apps. Like one of them is just like not a suggestion box, but like a kind of like anonymous like statement box. So like I don't know how professional this would be, but say like get a group, maybe they're new because most sprint teams are usually like they get it. It's the communication's there, but like there are people pleasers to some people that might have an idea or might feel like, hey, this might be an issue, but nobody's aware of it. So imagine like at the end of a sprint, you have a box and like people might put their statements in. And then it's anonymous. So like you kind of read them out and you see like you don't have to point out who put it in because it's anonymous. But if anybody agrees with it or disagrees with it or why, you think that might be like applicable or helpful?
So I'm torn because because there are some people who are like maybe adapting to be comfortable and like be able to say things in like a group of people.
Yeah.
So that's one way to be heard. But also you really want to promote like allowing people to be heard, right? And not just like positive things, but also like, hey man, have you thought about doing it this way? Like code reviews is a big thing, especially for developers. Before any code goes into the master branch, then like you have to have it reviewed by someone else. And as a developer, you have to know, like Zach might tell me like, hey, did you think about doing it this way? And I'm like, we have to have the communication, understanding, and respect between each other to know that, like, if he says that, he's not like, wow, why'd you do it like that, you know? So I think that it could be good in some situations, but it's better to just promote communication amongst teams.
It's definitely different here than there because, like, I've had groups where, like, although I didn't take that push that had like a bad migration in it, other people did. And, like, although we didn't have a meeting about it, say if I had found that out or something like that, and it probably would have like delayed whatever everything was with fixing that or not, et cetera. So I guess in the professional setting, people would kind of like, I don't know how to say stock up, but like they get professional on it and hopefully speak.
Yeah. I mean, like, and then, so you have like Zach and Matt. I know you guys know Matt from 285. Their pull requests where they review each other's codes are literally straight gifts, right? So it's also just like earlier in one of the slides, it was like being able to say something the right way, in the right context to the right person is like, if I know that Zach likes communicating with gifts, I'm gonna send him gifts all day, you know? So it's just learning to talk to each other. But anybody ask me a question?
Any other questions? Online? All right, thank you so much.